everybody, welcome to the show. Around the nation right here, TYT Nation, Jeff Waldorf here with you. Happy Monday, or maybe not happy Monday, as we just had not only Avengers Endgame over the weekend, which my wife and I went to the theater and saw that yesterday, but also Game of Thrones Battle of Winterfell. You know what? I must be dead inside because I didn't cry at either of those things. I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh my God, I was so sad. I was so upset. Yeah, man, it was kind of a bummer. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything for you. If you haven't seen any of those, for the night is dark and full of spoilers. But I did say there were some things that upset a lot of people, plot points and whatnot, that I was like, yeah, I like said character, but I am kind of bummed. But, you know, I'm not like super. You know why? Because I guess like some of the deaths, for me, it was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, that's a good end to the character, right? That's a good end to the character arc. Spoiled already. Yeah. So, oops. Hey, I didn't like spoil anything too much. Come on, it's Game of Thrones. You know people are gonna die. So people are gonna die, but it's different. It's different. I'm sorry. I'm just reading some of your guys' comments already. And hey, the night is dark and full of spoilers, as I said before, or I should say the show. But look, anyway, yeah, I must be dead inside. I don't know what's going on, or I must be too, like, numb to bad news, or when things go horribly wrong over the last few years. So I don't know. Yeah, everybody dies at the end. But anyway, yeah, it was quite a busy weekend. I had to catch up. So my wife and I, we went and saw Captain Marvel on the weekend, on Saturday, and then Avengers Endgame on Sunday, and then Sunday night stayed up super late to catch up on the first 2 episodes of Game of Thrones before then the last the episode that just released, Battle of Winterfell. So holy crap, that was a lot. And not only that, but I had to do a crap ton of yard work. So there it is. That was my weekend. Hopefully everybody else had a good weekend as well. Busy and full of fun stuff. So, you know what's funny? It is a good time to be a nerd, actually. And it's one of those things where it's kind of like with everything coming together, it's like our Super Bowl. Like, I don't like sports. I don't talk about sports. I don't really do sports. Come on, look at me. I don't sports. But this is like our Super Bowl. So, I don't know. Fun times. Anyway, hope everybody else had a great weekend. Now, on the show today, we're going to have some fun. First, we're going to talk about somebody who's back in the spotlight. And I have a little bit of skepticism, some of the stuff that she says, even though it might actually be true. Then we have Donald Trump spreading ridiculous, horrible falsehoods about abortion, late-term abortion specifically. Then we have another member of Trump's cabinet thinking that he's an idiot. Fun times. We have Ilhan Omar versus Meghan McCain again. You'll never guess who Wall Street is nervous about. But not only that, but I think a very interesting part of that story is who Wall Street actually does like in this election. Well, that's very interesting. You're going to like that one. And then, of course, we also have a new poll on Elizabeth Warren's plan for college, free college, actually forgiving a large amount of student debt. That's interesting. You're going to love the poll on that one. Actually, some kind of good news. I'm not going to spoil any more of that. Again, for the show is dark and full of spoilers. We're going to just move on. And actually start the show. But before we do, please hit the like and share button. Spoilers are over for Game of Thrones. So, hit the like button. Please share the stream. Do all that stuff. Helps out the show. Patrons, patreon.com/TYTNation. I want to thank Gary Worrell, Thomas Johnson, Matt Fontana, Phil Mercer, Urs Gosser, John Anselin, and Jennifer. So thank you to all those patrons. Patreon.com/TYTNation. That's how you can sign up to support the show. Also, I'll be reading some channel members later on after the break. Super chats, of course, always welcome, as well our comments. I usually read those following the breaks as well. So make sure to get plenty of comments or questions for me to answer, and I'll do that. All right. Now, that said, let's dive into the first story. And let's talk about who's back in the limelight. Okay. Yep, it's her. It's Omarosa. Omarosa is back, and she has opinions on the Mueller report, specifically regarding obstruction. So now, she was on MSNBC on Sunday morning, and she said that she would be grudgingly willing to appear before House Democrats, if subpoenaed, to talk about possible obstruction. Here, this is her appearance. Watch.
I think this is why Congress is so interested in talking with members of the team. It's because Donald Trump says one thing, and clearly in the Mueller report, Don McCain said another. And so Congress needs to get down to the bottom of what the truth is. And Donald thinks by lying, he's making it go away, when in fact, he's making it worse.
Yeah, so you believe McGahn here?
I worked with McGahn for a year, sat with him for a year in the meeting, senior staff every morning. He's a solid guy with clear integrity. There's nothing cloudy about his integrity. And so what he said in the report, I believe. The president has a problem with his credibility in this case. If you have to choose between Don McGahn and President Donald Trump on truth, I would go with McGahn.
There you go, right there. So from Omarosa during the time that you worked with him. Now, talk to me. Are you expecting to be subpoenaed here?
You know, it wouldn't surprise me. Okay. I made it very clear when I talked to Robert Mueller's team about the things that including the 2 boxes of campaign emails and documents that the White House still has in their possession of mine. So I think that they'll be very interested in learning about the other things that the White House has done to kind of intercede in this investigation.
All right, so here's Omarosa. She's back. She's saying, oh, no, I'm on the side of the Mueller report. I'm on the side of Don McGahn. I'm against Donald Trump. That's interesting. Other thing is that, I mean, I will go along if I can, like, if I'm going to get subpoenaed, I'll go along with it. Wink, wink. As in, hey, subpoena me, Democrats. Why? Because I want more media attention. Again, the question is, does she know something about obstruction? Well, no, you know what? It's not even that, because she already talked to the Mueller team and they already documented everything. But apparently now she's like, well, I mean, maybe there's stuff that they missed when it comes to obstruction. And look at all the emails and stuff they still have that were mine. I mean, talk to me, Democrats. Talk to me. Elevate me. Come on, come on, come on. This is another play, I think, to get back in the news. Even if she might actually be correct. And see, that's the issue with Omarosa. You have to ask these questions because all she cares about is media attention. Oh, I want to be relevant again. I want to get in the news. Please invite me on MSNBC to talk about Russia. Again, all Omarosa is known for is stirring up drama. That's what she does. When she served in the White House, by the way, she wasn't worried about obstruction. She wasn't worried about Trump's credibility. No, she was one of Trump's lackeys, one of his yes men. In fact, what she would do is that basically her main thing is that she would gather articles and videos and stuff from, like, for example, Morning Joe, CNN, things that were negative, and serve them up to Donald Trump's desk. But what's the point of, especially, again, the articles that she would give him were not complimentary to the president. Obviously, we're talking about Morning Joe here. So what was the whole point of doing that? to stir up drama, to get to rile up Donald Trump, and to get him to tweet ridiculous things. That's who Omarosa is. That was her entire role there. And now what she's doing, now that she's no longer on the side of Donald Trump, is now she's now on the Mueller side, the so-called resistance, and she's riling up the anti-Trumpers. She is another one of the grifters. Now, there are a lot of grifters on the supposed right side. These are the people that, of course, latched on to everything Russia, right? For example, Louise Mensch, Jen Kirkman, the Lobster Guy, all, for example, also hate Bernie Sanders, strangely enough, and all the people out there spreading falsehoods. And so Omarosa fits perfectly in there, but with an interesting distinction. She's not talking about collusion. What she's talking about is obstruction of justice, which was actually shown inside the Mueller report. So, as usual, though, perhaps she knows something interesting, or perhaps she wants to talk about something interesting. Maybe so. But you just got to be real careful about people who have known records of stirring up controversy, now claiming to have new information, now claiming to have something relevant to the conversation, especially when they've been out of the news cycle. Please be careful of hucksters. And Omarosa is nothing more than a huckster. Okay. That's who she is, man. By the way, I see some of you asking me about Lobster Guy. He's a dude on Twitter that is full anti-Bernie. So, it's a good thing you don't know him. Okay. All right, moving on. Now, recently at a rally in Wisconsin, President Trump began peddling once again a very dangerous lie about abortion. Let's take a look.
But your Democrat governor here in Wisconsin shockingly stated that he will veto legislation that protects Wisconsin babies born alive. Born alive. The baby is born. The mother meets with the doctor. They take care of the baby. They wrap the baby beautifully. And then the doctor and the mother determine whether or not they will execute the baby. I don't think so. Incredible. No, it's incredible. Until this crazy man in Virginia said it, nobody even thought of that, right? Did anyone even think of that? You hear late term. But this is where the baby is actually born. It came out. It's there. It's wrapped. And that's it.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible. That's incredible. Yeah, you know, it is incredible. It is incredible. As in, not credible whatsoever. Again, what he's saying is, oh, you know, the Democrats and these doctors, they take the baby out and then they murder it. No, that's not what happens. That doesn't / never has happened in the history of, modern birth, right? Look, I can't point out how brazenly he lied and has put people in actual danger. Again, he is literally calling doctors, as well as women who end up having to get a very rare late-term abortion, murderers, executioners. Again, the only reason that women get a late-term abortion, again, since it's super rare, since in every other circumstance, it is illegal unless it impacts the health of the mother or the child itself is not going to survive because it has major birth defects or is missing organs, etc., right? Look, when that happens, right, when there is a late-term abortion and it doesn't work, and that also happens sometimes. Sometimes the child does survive and is born, right? Okay, once that baby is born, it has legal protections so that you can't just take it out as if anybody would want to, but you can't just take it out and murder it. I mean, this is horrible. I can't believe I have to explain this. But there are people out there who buy it hook, line, and sinker. Oh, yeah, oh my God, yeah, they take it out and then they wrap it up and then they murder it. No, that's not what happens. Oh my God. All right, more. Trump, you heard him reference those two Democratic governors, right? Well, actually, you heard him say one. Tony Everts, right? Now, Tony Everts basically said that he would veto a bill that could make doctors felons based on their treatment of babies following an abortion or attempted abortion, right? Everts says such protections for newborns had already existed and said that legislation was redundant and not a productive use of time. Now, Trump also talked about Virginia Governor Ralph Northam. Now, referring to fetuses that have severe deformities and are non-viable outside the womb, that's really important. Northam said back in a January interview, and I have issues with Ralph Northam, but he's absolutely correct here. He said the infant would be delivered, the infant would be kept comfortable, would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and family desired, and then a discussion would ensue between physicians and the mother of what to do going forward. Right? Now, again, very important, non-viable outside the womb, as in this child will not survive. Now, what this would be, what conversation, I guess, would be after the baby is born is basically, would you take the child off life support? Because that's what it would, that's the conversation here, right? That's the circumstance. Now, in that situation, which is horrible, what do you do? What do you do? Well, that decision is between you and your doctor, right? And not the government. Now, the Republicans would love to continue stepping in and making that decision for you. And that's what these bills are, right? And another way to punish doctors. Now, Northam, of course, was taken out of context when he was specifically speaking about those babies who would not survive outside the womb. In fact, here you had a spokesman of Northam telling PolitiFact, quote, "No woman seeks a third trimester abortion except in the case of tragic or difficult circumstances, such as a non-viable pregnancy or in the event of severe fetal abnormalities." And the governor's comments were limited to the actions of physicians who would take in the event that a woman in those circumstances went into labor. Attempts to extrapolate these comments otherwise is in bad faith and underscores exactly why the governor believes physicians and women, not legislators, should make these difficult and deeply personal medical decisions. So here is the pro-freedom, right, position of, I don't want the government to get in between the doctor and the patient when they're making these decisions about what to do about a child who is not going to live outside the womb. That is far different than what Trump was saying. They take the baby out, they wrap it, and then they decide if they're going to murder it. I mean, it's so completely 100% false. I mean, look, now naturally, of course, his tweet got some criticism from medical professionals. Well, by the way, before I get to that, I want to get back to the small government angle, right? Why is it that Trump and all these small government Republicans keep trying to insert themselves between you and your doctor? That's not small government. That's enormous government. That's the biggest kind of government, going into making personal decisions when it comes to medicine. What do the Republicans always scream about single payer? Yeah, it's a government takeover of healthcare. Well, you were literally advocating for the government to step in and make the decision of what to do with your child that will not survive outside the womb. I mean, that's the biggest government that you could ever have. But anyway, now let me get to the criticism here from somebody who's actually in the medical field. Because, we should maybe respect their opinions because they know what's going on. They've been there. Now, one example here is Julia Pulver, right? Julia Pulver is a registered newborn intensive care unit nurse. Now, she says that she has cared for families with babies who were not viable outside the womb, so she directly has experience and knowledge into what's going on in this situation. Now, she had said, quote, in response, "As a NICU nurse, I served on the bereavement team. We were a special team of nurses tough enough to help new parents go through the worst day of their lives. Parents of babies who had fought so hard for their tiny little lives and weren't going to make it. and parents of babies who, after they were born and wouldn't have their mom's body keeping them alive, would die rather quickly. As these small bodies were failing, it was our job to be there with the parents at every step, give them support, and do our best to make some memories of their precious babies that could help ease their impending and overwhelming grief. When heroic measures failed, or a baby without a brain or working lungs or heart was born, we knew the end was near, and we encouraged the parents to be present in these final moments. We placed the baby skin to skin with the mom and placed a blanket over them both. We lowered the lights and quieted the room. We had as much or as little family and as the parents wanted in the room. We sang songs, we prayed, we hugged, we swayed, and we all cried. I cried into my throat burn for this family who has just had to endure the unthinkable. We were in the moment with those families. We took pictures, even for the ones who were too traumatized to think they'd ever want to see them, just in case they did. We made footprints. We put a lock of hair into a ribbon. We measured the baby's length and marked it on a tape measure. We made special tiny white gowns and hats for our angels. We created a memory box for these families who were losing their child that day. So yes, there are those in hospitals who are around infants who pass. They are the bereavement teams, and they provide the equivalent of neonatal hospice to families who are living through absolute hell, babies and children. It's a sad part of life. Now, the reason that I read that thread is, for one, that's the reality, right? So that's what happens in the hospitals. That's not what Trump says, where they take the baby out and they wrap it up and they decide to kill it. This is what happens. These nurses, these teams, these doctors, we're all getting together and they're making sure to do the best that they can for these families who are going through the worst time. And for someone like Trump to take advantage of that, to make a stupid political point, to rile up his ignorant base, is just horrifying. Beyond words, beyond the pale. Last tweet here. She adds that no one, absolutely no one ever, in any hospital, nor any mother who has just given birth, is conspiring with a doctor on whether or not to commit infanticide. This is perhaps one of the sickest accusations levied by this deranged dictator yet. Don't believe a word he says about anything important. This is a reality. What Donald Trump is doing is absolutely sick. He is lying about doctors, lying about nurses, and you know what? He's actually putting them in real harm, real, actual danger. You know why? Because, well, actually, you know what? There's a term that we do this, right? That we have for this. And it's a term when you basically make it so that deranged people will go after your either political enemies or whatever, right? In this case, not so much political enemies, but he's just using these people in order to rile up the base so that they would get out and vote. It's the same thing Republicans have done all the time for decades, since Roe v. Wade, right? That term is called stochastic terrorism. It's riling people up to the point of where they do something. And you know what? Trump saying these things, what he's doing is he's creating the next Scott Roeder. Now, in case you're not familiar with who he is, he's the man who assassinated Dr. Tiller. He was an abortion doctor who was brutally murdered by a right-winger, by a white right-winger. And just like now, the right wing, these pundits and you know, political figures, they egged them on by saying some of the worst things about Dr. Tiller, abortion doctors. I will never forget hearing Bill O'Reilly continuously repeat the words, Dr. Tiller, the baby killer, Dr. Tiller, the baby killer, Dr. Tiller, the baby killer, the baby killer. He kills babies. He's killing the babies. Over and over until somebody, Scott Roeder, picked up a gun, went to an abortion clinic, and shot him. Murdered him in cold blood. That's what the inevitable result of this kind of rhetoric gets you to. And unfortunately, this is more of the history repeating itself. It is sick, it is wrong, and it is, of course, massively incorrect. on the facts. And that's unfortunately what the right wing and what Donald Trump is currently about. Okay. One more story here. I apologize for getting super heavy on that. One more quick story before we go to a break. Now, a former aide to President Trump's national security advisor, John Bolton, is now trying to explain why John Bolton is continuing to stay in his position despite his, President Trump's presidency kind of falling apart. In an interview with the New Yorker, Mark Groombridge, which is the former aide, said that Bolton probably doesn't have a very high view of the president's intellect, which is why he feels he desperately needed to coordinate with the White House's national security policy. Quote, John is thinking, to the extent that I can modify or mollify the president's actions, I will. He is truly a patriot, but I wonder how he goes into work every day, because deep in his heart he believes the president is a moron. Here we go again. Well, look, obviously the president is a moron. That's fairly obvious. Everybody knows it. It's not a secret. It's not a secret in Washington. It's not a secret among Congress. Look, you should. I've talked about some of the stuff they say in Congress behind the scenes about President Trump. He's an idiot. That he's terrible. That he's destroying the Republican Party, et cetera, right? And that he's not very smart, not a very stable genius. So, look, again, not a shock, right? Now, apparently, according to this ex-aide, Bolton, that's why Bolton does something special to talk to the president. Says, quote, Bolton gets to the point very fast. He's very brief, and the president appreciates that. So you just got to be quick, right? Quicken with your point, because he has no attention span, and then, make your point real quick and then get out. And then make sure, of course, that you're maybe the last person in the room. Okay, all right. So the president has no attention span, and I've said that before. This is not a surprise, not a shock. Trump is dumb. And now, what's interesting about this story, it's not that the president's dumb. It's about how Bolton views himself. Now, I've talked about John Bolton before. John Bolton is not a good guy. John Bolton never met a country, an Arab country in the Middle East, that he didn't want to bomb. Just saying, right? Now, he is, again, a religious zealot. So he's one of the people that thinks that we need to bomb Iran in order to help Israel, etc., create all these wars. And so, that leads to terrible, horrific policies. This is the guy who believes that he's one of the few adults in the room and that he's keeping Donald Trump from doing his worst impulses. We're relying on this guy to prevent Trump from doing even worse things than he is doing right now. We are freaking doomed. Doomed. I mean, this shows you that there are no adults left. And maybe there never were adults in the room. And to show you how dangerous this is and how much they actually do agree on things, even though apparently he thinks the president's a moron, one official mentioned how the two of them have a, quote, shared contempt for international treaties and institutions they believe constrain American power. So, just like, for example, John Kelly. John Kelly said a lot of the same things. Oh, I think the president's not a very smart person. I think he's wrong on these issues. I think he's bad for America. But I happen to agree with him on immigration. And so I'm going to stay as long as I'm going to stay. And I'm going to try to push these terrible policies. Again, if this is a representative of the kind of people that are holding Trump back, it's definitely an example of why we need to get this entire administration out. If, again, these are the adults in the room, I'd hate to see the child. All right. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We got more stories. for you guys, including Ilhan Omar. Wall Street versus, well, everybody who's progressive. And then, of course, good news on polling. That's fun stuff. Leave your comments, super chats. I'll get to them after the break. Stay right here around the nation. Welcome back to the show, Around the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Okay, so we have a couple of comments here. But first I want to read off some channel members here. We have first Glenn Zeckman, Dennis McPherson, and BrownianProductions.com that are channel members. You want to sign up, you hit the, of course, join button down like the bottom of the screen. You'll see it. It's that big join button when you scroll down. Okay, anyway. So as far as comments goes, we've got a super chat here from Valerie Valois. Valois, I think. Hopefully I get that right. Who asked if I heard about the ICC decision not to prosecute war crimes in Afghanistan because the United States wouldn't cooperate. So, hey, let's just not go after war crimes because we know the United States is not going to cooperate. That's freaking wonderful. That just shows how much influence we have with the world stage, and it's not a good amount of influence. So the United States could be a leader in things like clean energy and peace, right? But unfortunately, we didn't go that direction. We went for the military-industrial complex. So now we're the leading exporters of weapons and war and death. So thanks, right-wingers. And thanks, of course, to the feckless Democrats who continue to perpetuate that same system. So that is sad, but not at all surprising. So thank you for the super chat on that, and for letting me know on that. Okay. Also, apparently breaking news: Rosenstein has resigned. I'll probably talk about that later, probably tomorrow. And then, okay. Oh, that's a good idea. Camo Joral says, I should highlight the A, T, and N on the Around the Nation look like an abbreviated attention. That's kind of awesome. And that's actually what I was kind of looking for. Then, let's see. Couple more here. Let me just read a few here. Sarge Tech says Bolton is an old-time warhawk. This is the adult in the room that's left for Trump. Sad. Absolutely. I agree with that. Prane says torture and war criminal Bolton. That's true. Judy Truitt points out that he believes he's assisting in Armageddon. Again, that's super scary and sad. Let's see. And I think, let's see. Actually, you know what? I should probably get back into the rest of the stories. But anyway, thank you guys for the messages. Thank you for the super chat, of course, Valerie. And so let's move forward. Okay. So Representative Ilhan Omar is again defending herself against Meghan McCain after she made some comments on The View. Now, these comments, of course, blamed Omar's rhetoric for a deadly attack at a California synagogue that happened on Saturday. Now, according to Raw Story, the Saturday shooting at the Shabbat of Poway Synagogue had left one dead and the rabbi injured in the most recent attack at a place of worship, and another example of right-wing terrorism. I added that part because, look, that's what it is. It's right-wing terrorism. Yet nobody seems to talk about that. It's weird. Weird. Anti-Semitism. And, of course, that comes mainly from the extreme right. Now, here's what McCain had said, quote, I do think that when we are having conversations about anti-Semitism, we should be looking at the most extreme on both sides. And I would bring up Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and some of her questions that got some of her comments that got so much attention. So some of her comments included it's all about the Benjamins when it comes to so much support from Congress members for AIPAC, right? Again, AIPAC is a lobbying influence arm of the right-wing Israeli government headed by Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, I'm not a fan of the right-wing government of Israel, and neither is Ilhan Omar. And so she criticized that and said, look, basically, they, lobby. They don't, officially give money, but they're able to funnel it through, I guess. Funnel money through, I think, to politicians. And basically get influence over our politicians. And so they would pass more pro-Israel or pro-right-wing Israeli government policy, right? And of course, it's the same. A lot of other countries still do the same thing. Saudi Arabia, for example, has a lobbyist arm. I would imagine nearly every country has a lobbyist arm that they use to try to influence American politicians. You know what? Maybe we should make it so that it's more difficult to try to bribe our politicians into doing things that support the benefits of to the benefit of other countries. Maybe we should, look at doing that. But unfortunately right now, and see, we don't. And so, look, when you point out Saudi Arabia has a lobbying arm, well, then people get upset. Not as many people get upset. But when you point out AIPAC as the lobbying arm of Israel, a ton of people get upset. A lot of people. And they say things like, how dare you? That's anti-Semitism. That feeds into old, anti-Jewish tropes and et cetera, right? And so, look, Ilhan Omar, I don't think she needed to apologize, but she apologized anyway. And of course, every time that this is brought up, they hold the apology against her and say, look at that, she apologized. She's anti-Semitic. She keeps saying anti-Semitic things. But it wasn't anti-Semitic to point out how AIPAC is a lobbyist group. And so that's why you shouldn't apologize, especially when you're right. Especially when you're right. Now, she continues. When you're talking about rhetoric and you want to talk about President Trump, and by the way, I agree he needs to have his feet held to the fire as well, but we're talking about it on both sides of the aisle as well. Now, wait a minute. It's not the same. Again, calling out the influence of a lobbyist group, it's not the same as, for example, Donald Trump saying that there are good people on both sides on Charlottesville. One side chanted, the Jews will not replace us. How is that the same as what Ilhan Omar was saying? I mean, there's good people on that side, but no, I guess it's this horseshoe theory, right? Which is absolute ridiculous false equivalence. Pointing out money in politics and influence by foreign lobbying groups is not, look, it's not even equivalent. It's not the same at all. Anti-Semitism on the right wing is horrible. It's horrifying. And so it doesn't exist on the left as much as the right wing tries to say it is. So, but anyway, look, this whole comparison, it's about attacking progressives. And that's what it is. And attacking any legitimate criticism of the right-wing government of Israel. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. Now, McCain thinks, oh, no, I'm being a friend of Jews, right? No, but here's the thing. Supporting the right-wing government of Israel is actually bad for Jewish people because endless war in the Middle East is bad for Jewish people as well. Keeping Palestinians in open-air prisons put more Jewish people at risk of terror attacks both there and here. And so that's bad. Doing what the right-wing government of Israel is doing is not sustainable. It's not good in the long run. It's going to end up having terrible impacts and losses of life. Okay? And so you want to criticize that. That should be absolutely acceptable and 100% correct because it is correct. So now, Omar's response, right? We're finally getting to that part. Here's what she said when she quoted the article. Oh, bless her heart. Hey, look, you want to talk about keeping it simple? You want to talk about throwing a little bit of shade? Oh, there you go. There's all the shade that you need. Okay. Next story. Moving on. All right. It appears that Wall Street is getting very nervous about some of the candidacies on the Democratic ticket. Now, according to Axios, roughly 20 of the Democratic Party's high-profile donors from the financial industry had sat down over dinner to discuss how they were feeling about the 2020 presidential race. Now, this was convened back in April, early April. Donor Stephen Ratner and Blair Efron, the group, shared notes on the overflowing field of candidates. There's over 20 candidates, by the way, ranging from progressives to very conservative Democrat, establishment, etc., and everything in between, right? So now, when you're talking about Wall Street wants to find a candidate who is, quote-unquote, business-friendly, right? Which basically means loves the status quo, very little change, lower taxes, less regulation, and so business, business-friendly, right? Now, to them, they're looking for someone who can check the appropriate boxes and actually win a Democratic primary and a general election against Trump, but also when they get there to basically not change anything. So they're not looking for change. They're looking to keep things pretty much exactly the same, as Wall Street has been doing excellent when it comes to making lots and lots of money. Now, they're apparently, sadly, not having a lot of luck with their preferred candidates. One of the bankers who was there said, quote, "There's tremendous fear. Tremendous fear." I can assume that fear is their candidates are not going to win in the face of people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren doing so well. Bernie Sanders, of course, is a front runner. He's raised a lot of money. He's ahead in a lot of the polls, or just barely behind Joe Biden, who had just recently announced. And we know about Joe Biden. The guy usually starts off strong, raises a lot of money from corporations and wealthy donors, but then ends up flaming out because, he's Joe Biden and he's a literal gaffe machine. Anyway, again, that fear is that they're not going to get that pro-banker candidate. So Axios noted that, the candidates who had long cultivated relationships with Wall Street, such as Cory Booker and Kirsten Gillibrand, were struggling to gain traction and had grown more hostile to finance as their party had too. I love it. I mean, look at Gillibrand, right? So Wall Street loves Kirsten Gillibrand. Now, where's she at? Well, according to Real Clear Politics, which has aggregated all the polls up to recently, she has an average of less than 1%. Ouch. Now, Cory Booker is actually faring better, especially, again, since you're in a field of 20 different people. He's actually doing a respectable 3.5%. Now, Joe Biden, of course, in the aggregate polls is leading about 29%, followed by Senator Bernie Sanders at 23%. So, again, that's an aggregate poll or an average of all the recent polls up until now, right? So now, in the article, they said that Biden had, quote, never until a few months ago maintained any successful meaningful relationship with Wall Street. I'm not sure about that. Joe Biden has worked on behalf of credit card companies. In fact, that's one of the reasons Warren said she even got into politics in the first place, to be a foil to Joe Biden and his love of big credit card companies. But the important phrase there was when they said, until a few months ago, Joe Biden wasn't buddy-buddy with Wall Street. Meaning, Wall Street and him are getting kind of close now. Now, nearly everyone else in the field, the financiers felt, is being pulled leftward by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Now, the article makes one interesting mention here of a candidate the financiers really do like other than Cory Booker and Kirsten Gillibrand, and this is somebody who's actually doing okay in the polls. And that's Kamala Harris. Interesting. Kamala Harris polls third according to an aggregate of polling. So watch out for Kamala, right? If the bankers like her, well, then that's kind of a bad sign. It's a bit of a warning sign anyway. As for Sanders and Warren, just the fact that they're making Wall Street very nervous and pulling candidates away from them, that is a win in itself. Okay. One more here. Senator Elizabeth Warren has been putting out some very impressive policy proposals as of late. Now, her recent plan would eliminate up to $50,000 worth of student loan debt for each person in the country and to make state and community college tuition free. I think that's a great policy. It could go further. In fact, there are people out there with $100,000 or more in student loan debt, and it's a huge, gigantic drag in the economy. So $50,000, though, I think is actually a pretty decent start, and eventually could go further. Now, apparently, progressives aren't just the only ones that are in favor of this. Turns out that a majority of Americans also agree with this. According to the latest Hill Harris X survey, 64% of registered voters said that they would support a plan to institute a wealth tax on the nation's 75,000 richest families to pay for a plan that forgives $50,000 of student loan debt and makes state and community colleges tuition free. Now, the proposal was also supported across all age groupings, although voters who are 65 years old and up were somewhat less likely to support it. Shocker. Old people, not really supportive of making college free or affordable. 67% of respondents between 18 and 64 said that they backed Warren's idea compared to 53%, just over half of voters who were older. Now, again, I'm not surprised that there are a significant portion of older people who don't support this because I think there's a lot of people who just don't get it. Costs for college back in their day were a lot cheaper. Look, you could, for example, work a part-time job and pay your college tuition without any sort of issues. Why? That's because state governments generally foot more of the bill back then than they do now. So the state colleges would put more money in, the state governments would put more money into these colleges, and so that would make the tuition lower. Now, states have actually rolled back that funding and actually don't put enough money into these colleges, meaning that the rest is made up by us, regular people who are trying to get an education. So that makes it much, much more expensive. But again, they don't understand that, right? So they don't know how expensive it is. And maybe there's a good portion of them that might be viewers of Fox News and conservative media and might also think, well, why should we put more money into colleges? Why should we make it more affordable when all they do is indoctrinate people into liberalism? Okay. Now, which is ridiculous. Well, that would mean that, well, again, since colleges tend to teach facts, I guess, have a liberal bias. But anyway. Now, there's also a slight bit of wealth divide. Again, not too shocking. 58% of respondents living in households making $75,000 or more a year said that they supported the education and tax proposal. 58%, still a pretty decent majority. Respondents who made less than $75,000 backed the new policy by 69 to 31. Dang. So a majority nonetheless. Now, again, the people who are making a little bit more money of over $75,000, well, maybe they think, I don't know, I'm making a decent amount of money. What if they end up taxing me more to pay for it? Well, I don't want to do that. Look, we're talking about Elizabeth Warren's wealth tax, again, that hits not very many people. The 75,000 richest families are going to get taxed more in the wealth tax. They're not coming after you making over $75,000 a year. No, they're not coming after the middle class family. They're not coming after the upper middle class family. That's not happening, right? So don't worry, you're not going to get taxed more. So, nonetheless, majorities, right? So now the only voters who are against this are, shockingly, or not shockingly, identified as Republicans or conservatives. Even then, though, it's kind of close. 52% of Republicans, self-identified Republicans and conservatives, said that they oppose a policy initiative, while 48% said that they supported it. That's super close. And that division, by the way, is within the 5% sampling margin of error for that specific group. The overall survey has a 3.1% sampling margin of error. Democrats, of course, unsurprisingly, backed this overwhelmingly, 78 to 22%. Independents, 66 for it, 34% opposed. Again, independents are mainly for it, as well as Democrats. So it's pretty popular among pretty much all groups, except for Republicans. Now, if this poll holds, and I have no reason to believe that it wouldn't, maybe as we get more information, minds may change. You might have more people in favor. You might have more people against it as more details come out about it. But generally, if it holds, I mean, it's a winner. This is a winning policy, especially among younger millennial voters who are more likely to vote Democratic. Now, there is a problem here, and that problem is exposure. Now, where have you really heard about this plan other than mostly, for the most part, independent media? Are they really talking about it all that much on MSNBC or CNN? Maybe. But then again, you have to look at the framing, right? Are they talking about this policy as good, or are they talking about this policy as, I don't know, what's it going to cost? How are we going to pay for it? Well, we already know how to pay for it. It's a wealth tax on the 75,000 richest Americans in the country. We know how to pay for it. It is incredibly detailed, like pretty much all of Elizabeth Warren's policies. So, nonetheless, I don't think they're going to cover it, or at least cover it fairly, right? And Fox News, of course. Fox News is going to call it socialism. They probably already have. So corporate media, of course, that's what irritates me about it, because right now they're boosting Joe Biden, who is against doing anything about, college, the cost of college, and actually has no empathy for millennials, despite, of course, them being drowned in student loan debt. Look, the thing about Joe Biden is he helped, again, credit card companies, but he also helped make it much more difficult to discharge student loan debt. So Biden right now is the anti-populist Hillary 2020, right? And unfortunately, the mainstream media loves him. They're boosting him. They're giving him the most attention and the most positive coverage in the media. While, of course, for you have hit piece after hit piece on Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren is basically just ignored. So, despite having incredibly strong, detailed policy positions, I think she should be polling at number 2. Nonetheless, instead, you have no empathy Biden at number 1, or sometimes number 2. And Pete, I have no policy Buttigieg, usually in 3rd. And then Kamala Harris, of course, is a police person, a cop, at 4. And Elizabeth Warren is not getting the polling I think she deserves. But we know why. We know cable news hates policy discussions. And unfortunately, that's where we're at. I think this plan is good, it's popular, and more people need to be aware of what these candidates bring to the table. And unfortunately, our news media is, again, failing at doing so. And this is a great example. Okay. All right. That's it. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Thank you for super chats. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. Thank you to the Facebook viewers as well. I see you guys. Thank you. Please make and share the stream as well. Like and share the stream, I should say, there. And thank you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Night, nation.